Hi, everyone. Welcome to our special education topic presentation. Today, we're going to be talking about the triennial or reevaluation process. My name is Chris. I'm a first year school
Your school
psychology
psychology
student,
student?
and I'm also from Cal State Long Beach.
My name is Kyle. I'm a first year special education teacher in an extensive support needs classroom in Garden Grove Unified School District, and I'm a master's degree in special education student at Cal State Long Beach.
Hello, my name is Kaya Hudson. I'm a school psychologist intern, so I'm in my third year of the program at Cal State Long Beach, and I'm completing my internship in Westminster School District.
Yes, and we are part of the CRIS grant. So CRIS stands for Culturally Responsive Instruction and Interventions in Self-Determination Programs. This is a federally funded grant led by Dr. Kelly Sanderson and Dr. Christian Powers. So one of the primary objectives of CRIS is to develop and implement culturally responsive self-determination interventions with students with disabilities. Um, Another objective of the grant is to do some outreach, and this is one of those outreach opportunities that we're doing today. We're doing parent trainings for today, and so today we'll be talking all about the reevaluation or the triennial process today. So just looking at our agenda for tonight, I'll be covering what is the reevaluation process. Next, we'll cover more in depth the reevaluation process step by step. And then third, we'll go ahead and focus on what does that reevaluation process look like in the actual IEP meeting. And then number four, we'll go ahead and look at your role as a parent or family member, and just highlighting your importance in the team. So part one, what is the reevaluation or triennial process? We should first start off with IDEA. So this law stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and this is kind of just like the foundation or backbone of IEPs and the special education in schools. And so these are the guiding principles of IDEA. So we can first start with Child Find. So Child Find involves the act of school districts identifying, locating, and evaluating all children with disabilities, regardless of the severity, and to provide them with appropriate educational services. Um, all areas of suspected disability must be assessed by the team. Um, Also, there is free and appropriate public education, also known as FAPE. And this is a guideline that where eligible students with disabilities are entitled to an education individualized to their unique needs. And then there is the IEP, also known as the Individualized Education Program. And this is a written statement of special education services. There's also something called the least restrictive environment, which you may have come across in your experience with the IEP. The acronym for this is LRE. And so FAPE is to be provided alongside peer without disabilities to the greatest extent possible. And then lastly, there's parent participation, which is arguably one of the most important parts of the IEP process. So parents are full and equal participants on their child's IEP team, and they're definitely one of the most important stakeholders and where the IEP team looks towards for support and being able to identify a child's holistic self. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and briefly cover the IEP, given that this we're discussing kind of like the third IEP meeting that you may be going through. So again, the Individualized Education Plan or the IEP is a blueprint or a map of the child's educational journey. So the IEP team looks at present levels of performance. So where is the student starting in their academic journey? Um, where is the student going? So the IEP team and the family create a set of goals that that target or amplify targets a student's potential weaknesses or even amplifies a particular a student's particular set of strengths. And what help is needed to get there. Specific services and accommodations are highlighted in the IEP. The IEP also deals with who is the student traveling with. And so they're looking at different types of placements in schools. And then also, did the student arrive? Did they achieve their goals? So there's kind of like a sense of progress monitoring within the IEP. Yes, and then the IEP team. So the IEP team can look a little bit different and vary between like school sites, but for the most part, it includes a general education teacher, a special education teacher. Usually, a district representative is present, such as any type of an administrator, kind of like thinking about like a principal or an assistant principal, an expert who can interpret evaluation results from the triennial or initial meetings, such as a school psychologist. The student may or may not be present. Um, a translator may or may not be present, depending on the need for understanding language that the school team might not be familiar with. And then you, which is the parent, very, a very important member of the IEP team for sure. And so this may, you may be familiar with this. This is the very top of an IEP document. And so this kind of just lays out the basic information of the student and important dates. Looking at meeting type here, there's these small check boxes, and whatever's checked indicates the type of IEP meeting that is to be conducted. So on the very left, it says initial, and this is kind of like the very first IEP meeting. Um, a student's very first experience in their determination of being eligible for special education services. Next to that is the plan review, which is also the annual, which is kind of like almost like a checkup meeting to making sure that the plans put in place in the student's IEP has been successful, or what is the progress of the overall IEP. And then the third option is eligibility evaluation. And so this, if it was checkmark, indicates that this is the triennial meeting, and this is likely in the year 3 of the IEP. And we'll go into this into more detail. Yes, so the triennial or reevaluation process is an IEP meeting that typically meets every 3 years to discuss progress and potential for IEP changes. So prior to the actual triennial meeting, the IE team is at work and they're conducting a full evaluation of the child, assessing for, if applicable to their needs or concerns, their cognitive and academic domains, and collecting new information about the child. And then so you might be thinking, why is the triennial so important? And so typically schools have 3 goals in mind, 3 goals that they're trying to accomplish. Number one being determining whether the student still has needs that would be met by their current services. Um, so seeing if like a student's particular placement in a classroom for a given amount of time during a week is still beneficial to the student and helping the student achieve their academic goals. Um, the triennial process also determines if a student may qualify for services under another primary or secondary disability. Um, and then also the third goal is typically to determine if established interventions or supports are working towards or meeting IEP goals. Um, some typical outcomes of the triennial is that students may exit from their current services. Um, Additionally, the IEP team may modify the current IEP to add or remove supports and or goals, or the IEP can remain completely unchanged. And this would basically mean continuing current services that was established in the initial or the annual.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, I'll take over for part 2. This is the reevaluation process. Okay, so even for eligible, so we call them triennials because most of the time they happen every 3 years, but the technical name is eligibility evaluations. So even for those, you must give informed consent before your child can be evaluated. So even though you gave consent in the past, obviously for the initial evaluation, we'll need it again. So every 3 years, the IEP team will chase you down and make sure we get your signature before we evaluate your child. And then this is just kind of a table giving an overview of what these triennial reevaluations look like. So how often? Generally every 3 years from the last evaluation date. Yes, we do need parental consent. However, there's a stipulation that if we don't get a response, the district may proceed after making reasonable efforts to obtain consent. So we will make every effort to get consents to evaluate the child. The assessment timeline, so this, once we have your consent, it'll be 60 calendar days, excluding school breaks of more than 5 days. An early reevaluation can be requested by a parent or teacher before the 3-year mark. So if you have additional concerns or a parent or a teacher has additional concerns or everyone or thinks, they're meeting their goals or the 3 years is just kind of a guideline, but it can be requested to be held earlier. And then there's some exceptions. We don't technically have to do the reevaluation if both the parent and school agree in writing that it's unnecessary. So we can do triennial waivers. Typically, this is only if, the child qualifies under the same eligibility consistently. And it's not required if the student graduates with a diploma or ages out at 22. So what areas are being assessed? This is the same as the initial evaluation. So as school psychologists, we'll look at cognitive functioning, social, emotional, and behavioral functioning, adaptive, and then we'll have the school nurse look at health. The special education teacher will look at academic achievement. A speech language pathologist will look at language and communication, and an occupational therapist will look at sensory motor skills. So not all of these areas will be covered in every assessment. It's really what the referral concern is. But this is kind of an overview of what could be assessed. And just like with the initial evaluation where the student qualifies under at least one of the disabilities recognized by IDEA, it's the same case as with triennials. This doesn't have to be the same from evaluation to evaluation. It typically is, but it could change between evaluations. And this is the RIOT ISIL matrix. So RIOT stands for review, interview, observe, and test. And ISIL stands for instruction, curriculum, environment, and learner. So this just shows that as evaluators, we're not just, a lot of people think a school psychologist gives a single test and that's, they qualify or they don't qualify, but that's not the case at all. We do a lot more than that. We review, or I'll go into it in the next slides, but it's not just a single test or anything like that. So there's records review. So the assessment team reviews existing documents like former psycho-ed reports, which we'll have if it's triennial, attendance records, etc. This helps identify students' strengths and areas of growth to help guide the reevaluation. Interviews are super important. So we always try to do this with the student, with parents or family members and teachers. Again, helps gather insight beyond test scores and records and provides information again about the student's strengths, challenges, behaviors, and any changes over time. Observations. So we try to do them in various settings. So not just the classroom, we like to look at unstructured observations, such as on the playgrounds. And this helps us assess how they interact with peers, follow the classroom routine, etc. And we do both formal, like systematic behavior tracking and informal narrative observations. And then we have testing. So not just the school psychologist tests, but speech language pathologists, special education teachers, etc. So we all use our own tools. And then again, we'll compare our results to previous evaluations and peer norms. And then going back to the slide with all the clouds on it, these are kind of the types of tests and assessments that we use for each area, like cognitive, academic achievement, etc. Yeah, pretty much it.
Thank you, Kaya. And so the next step would be holding the actual IEP meeting itself. So the IEP meeting that's held as the reevaluation or triennial meeting will unfold similar to that of the initial or the annual meeting. One major difference will be that the school psychologist is present where they are not typically present in an annual, as well as typically the school nurse will be present because they are assessing health needs as well. And oftentimes the school psychologist takes lead in these meetings and will do most of the presenting during the meeting. Members of the IEP team will take turns presenting their findings based on the assessments that they conducted, and then these findings will be discussed as the present levels of performance. After going over the assessments and present levels of performance, the team members will discuss progress on the student's current goals. So these will be goals drafted and shared at the previous IEP meeting that the student has worked on over the course of a year. And then new goals are proposed for the student to work on over the course of the coming year. The next topic of discussion will be the educational setting and services that should be provided to support the student. So that setting would be, are they going to be in a self-contained classroom? Are they going to be in a general education setting with some like pull-in or push-out service or push-in or pull-out services? Are they going to be in a blend of a SDC classroom and a gen ed setting? And then the services would be, are they going to have those speech services continue? Maybe the occupational therapy or physical therapy? And then the next thing we will discuss is your role as the parent or family member. So your role is to give input, and it might be the most important role that you have, or the most important part of the IEP process is your input. Nobody knows your student better than you do. The IEP is a collaborative process. Your dreams, aspirations for your child matter and should be taken into consideration when the school site team is determining goals and the needs for your student. Another important part of your role is to participate, ask questions, advocate for your child, and make suggestions. We don't want to, as the educators, be making every single choice here and telling you this is what we think best for your student. So this is what your student's going to work on. If there's something that is very important to you and the way you live your life at home, bring that up in the meeting so that we can shape our goals and things we're working on to meet that need at home as well. And then another important role, and admittedly a very intimidating one, is to know your rights. Each year you should receive a copy of your parental rights or procedural safeguards, and it is a very large document that covers a lot of information. But in there, it lets you know about that free and appropriate public education. It lets you know about timelines and when you can call an IEP and how much time then the team has to give you a date and time for an IEP. It has information on those rights to waive the reevaluation or call early a reevaluation. Whether or not you have to sign an agreement for an IEP is all in this document, and it's a lot to take in, but it's an important thing to know. So California State University Long Beach has a community clinic for counseling and educational services. The clinic offers comprehensive educational and psychological services at a low cost. So here is the phone number that you would call to reach out to them if you have questions. And there's their website as well, or you can scan the QR code to access it quicker.